Um, Last year, on October 10, which was a Monday, I remember quite vividly, I arrived home from work and my wife said that somebody knocked she caught somebody trying to install a smart meter in our meter box. And my wife said, "Oh look, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm just installing a smart meter." She said, "Oh, do you have to?" "Yeah, you have to have one." And she said, "Like, can you just come back?" She'd remembered she actually read something in the Herald Sun, something about smart meters. So I said, "Okay, I'll come back, I'll do your neighbours and come back." So she went inside, looked on the internet and realised that there's something about radiation and smart meters. She thought, no, she didn't like the idea of it. So when he came back, she said, "No, I don't want to do it. Can you defer it?" I said, "Yeah, okay, we can defer it until a later date." So the person left. Now, so I arrived at home that night and my wife told me what happened. I said, "Oh, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with smart meters. I mean, I can't see any problems with them. You know, it should be fine." She said, "Oh, I've just got a funny feeling about them." So that was the end of the story. After about 4 or 5 days, I said to my wife, well, I was waking up with headaches in the morning. And I said to my wife, I was waking up with headaches. But I was going to work and I was fine, my headaches were gone. So I couldn't work out what the problem was. And then she said to me, "When did they start?" I said, "Oh, Monday night, or Tuesday morning." And she said, "Well, the neighbour had a smart meter installed on the Monday, against her will, mind you, but she thought she had to have it." And I said, "No, it wouldn't be a smart meter. I mean, that wouldn't be affecting me." She said, "Well, I think it could be." So anyway, she convinced me to try sleeping in the lounge room, which is further away from the neighbour's smart meter. And I slept in the lounge and I woke up a lot better the next morning. So I thought, hang on, this is a bit scary. So the longer I was there in the house, the worse the headaches was getting. And the funny thing is, I was going to work, I was fine, so I couldn't chuck a ciggy because I was better at work. But so then I thought, every day I was getting worse and worse. My headaches were pretty bad. Then my son started to complain of headaches as well. And his room was was 8 metres away from the smart meter. Mine was about 8.5, about 9 metres away from next to a neighbour's smart meter. And then I thought, hang on, this is getting really bad. And I couldn't cope anymore. So I rang up the minister's office and made a complaint. And the minister's advisor said to me, "Well, you're the first person ever to complain about smart meters and the effect."
Just a lie, straight out.
Well, I didn't know it was a lie. I thought, "Oh, really?" I thought, this is a bit strange. But then I rang up Gemini, complained, and that's a similar thing basically. I was getting nowhere. Eventually, I got to a certain person, Gemini, and they agreed to come to our house and investigate. But in the meantime, these headaches were really bad. Also my daughter's eyes were being affected as well. But my wife seemed to be okay. My 2 younger children were okay. I've got 4 children. We had somebody come in to measure the radiation in our house. And lo and behold, we actually saw the measurements, just like the movie at the beginning, but without sound, of the radiation coming into my son's room primarily. And I was walking into that room, I could feel something, as well as our front room with the studies. We had a smart meter, industrial smart meter across the road, a 3-phase meter, and one next door to us. So we didn't have one ourselves. And so with these measurements, we could see, for example, there's 182 microwatts coming into my son's room, which is 30 times the recommended standard from a German university. Okay. However, we're told by Gemini it's within Australian standards, so it's okay. So we can't do anything about it. Look, Gemini did, because I made such a, racket with them, they agreed to turn down the smart meters across the road and next door by 90%. So they said they'll turn down 90%. So imagine that how powerful these meters are. If they can still turn down 90% and be effective. Yeah. So they did turn them down 90%. However, I did feel a bit better the next few days. However, not much better. And the longer I stayed in the house, the worse it was. And then the following week on a Thursday, I had enough. We said, we're going to leave this house. I packed up. I went to my father's place in the other side of town with my son, and my wife went to her parents' place with 3 of the children, because I couldn't cope anymore. My son couldn't cope, and my daughter as well. That's how bad it was. And we ended up sleeping in the lounge room by the end. So we left, and we thought we just couldn't stay there. So 7 weeks living outside the home. Meanwhile, I contacted the minister's office, no response. Basically, I wrote to the minister. I had medical certificates saying it was affecting me. 2 years ago, I went to my GP complaining that when I use my mobile phone, I get headaches. My GP didn't know anything about it. She did some research. Then she came back to me and said, yes, actually there is a correlation between headaches and mobile phones. I'm obviously sensitive. So she advised me to limit my use of mobile phones and not use it too close to my head, use loudspeaker or earphones. So I limit my use. And the headaches were the same as those I experienced with mobile phones. But the difference is, mobile phones, you control the usage. You turn them on and turn them off. With smart meters, they're continuously emitting radiation 24 hours a day. It's just non-stop. Now, the government and power companies say, oh, it only emits radiation 4 or 5 times a day. That is a complete lie. I've actually measured, I've seen the measurements myself. It's constant, every few seconds. And you saw the beginning, the video at the beginning, where it's constantly emitting radiation. What they don't understand is that maybe the power companies receive the messages from the smart meters every half an hour or 4 or 5 times a day, but these meters are communicating with each other constantly, emitting these pulses. And that's the difference between the radiation from mobile phones and smart meters. This radiation actually are pulses. So they say it has more of an effect on our bodies because it's pulsing at you constantly. Now, after 7 weeks, we didn't know what to do, so we actually painted our house with carbon paint, which protects it from the radiation from outside, and we're fine now. We moved back home, but we're a lot in debt as a result. We're more in debt. But we had to do something. The thing is, what really angers me is that the government is ignoring these pleas from people that are suffering from installation of smart meters. I thought I was the only person, but since it's been affected me, I've met lots of other people who are suffering. I know people who are living in cars, who are living in a tent, who are actually sleeping in their workplace because they can't sleep in their own home. Other people who are sleeping in lounge rooms because they can't sleep in their bedroom because smart meters are right next to their bedroom. Now, in my research, I found out that there are about 3% of the population that are severely sensitive to electromagnetic fields. I'm one of them, obviously. Only 3%. Another 30% are moderately sensitive. But there are 3% population who can't cope in wireless areas, who can't use mobile phones, etc. And this is documented. In Sweden, it's actually recognised as a disability, electrosensitivity. So imagine if the government said to everyone, okay, we're going to put traces of nuts in the water supply. A small percentage of the population are allergic to nuts. This is what we're doing to the population here. We're actually putting in radiation throughout every household in Victoria. And it's going to affect a percentage of the population. Some of you here won't be affected. Some of you will. But what I've read is also in Europe, the percentage is actually increasing because the amount of radiation, we become more sensitive to it. And suddenly, basically people who weren't sensitive become sensitive. Now, for example, I do get headaches straight away when I use mobile phones. So I need to always use an earpiece. Last year, I could use a mobile phone for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, I was fine. So I've become more sensitive. So the thing is, the government's ignoring all these people that are being affected. And then we have the power companies who basically don't give a damn. They're going in, installing these things, and they know it's affecting a certain population. They know that. But in the end, what can you do?
Quite a bit.
Sorry?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, we can, but I'm saying we can stand up against it. Now, the government's defence is always, it was all within Australian standards. All within Australian standards.
There's no Australian standards written on the bottom.
But it's safe, okay? They're saying it's safe because it's within Australian standards. But the thing is, just because it's within Australian standards does not make it safe for some people. The thing is, asbestos was once within Australian standards. I mean, smoking was prescribed by doctors to pregnant women 40 years ago. It was within Australian standards. It doesn't make it safe. And what they don't tell you is that the Australian standards are 10 years old. As we've seen, the amount of radiation now in the environment is increased millions of times more than 10 years ago. And also, as we found out tonight, the standards don't look at non-thermal effects And this is interesting, the government never actually acknowledges that Apanza sees as a problem with its own standards, because they are now reviewing these standards. But the government is not telling you this. And the standards are a lot lower than they are in Europe, for example. So just because it's within Australian standards doesn't make them safe. I spoke on radio about our problem, having to leave the home. Minister Drouin, he was interviewed the next day to respond to what I was saying. He kept on saying, smart meters are within Australian standards, they are safe. And the person on radio was saying, however, Mr. Florio has medical documentation. He kept on saying, while being informed, they are safe. It's incredible that that's their fallback.
Has anybody told him he's a fool yet? Because that should be done publicly.